cocktail chat series, and welcome to level 1. A very exciting time and a fabulous time to celebrate this weekend the Auckland Art Gallery opening to the public. So we'll see you all in there for some live art experiences, which will be great. Penny, Diva and I, we've got 2 more weeks of our cocktail chats planned. Next week, we're going to be talking to Fiona Connor just before she steps on a plane to go back to Los Angeles. And after that, we're going to be talking to the Curator of International Art at Auckland Art Gallery, Sophie Matheson. So we've got 2 more weeks. And then after that, we're going to pause, take stock, listen to your feedback, everybody, to see how we might continue on this program in some other way. So tonight, though, I'm joined here in Jenny Todd's home, the director of 2 Rooms, to talk principally about 2 important artist projects that Jenny is involved in with artists from 2 Rooms. These 2 projects are distinguished by the way they've embraced time and place, journeying. 2 projects that involve considerable journeying around the world, around the Pacific and further afield, and across time, bringing in history and contemporary concerns. So they're really interesting projects. One is by an exhibition at 2 Rooms with the work of Robin White and also Mark Adams. And Penny and I want to make a special note that both Robin and Mark are members of the foundation, and they've both generously gifted artworks to the Auckland Art Gallery collection through the foundation. And of course, Jenny here with me tonight, Jenny Todd, is also a foundation donor. So they're all part of our foundation whānau, which we're very pleased to have involved. So I'm going to pass over to Jenny because she's going to first of all introduce you to the body of work by Robin White, and also important to mention her collaborators that she works very, very closely with. And Jenny, welcome to start with. And you've had a disruptive time, I know. Everybody running a gallery has had to think about scheduling and rescheduling. What's happened with you and 2 Rooms?
We are back up and running, which is great. Our show at the moment is Matt Arbuckle. Matt arrived in New Zealand about 2 days before lockdown, and so his work was stuck at the airport and he was very frustratingly stuck. But finally, when we got to level 2, he was able to stretch up his works, and his show is on now. But that show is on for 2 months. We needed to give ourselves some time because Mark Adams, who was supposed to be showing now, couldn't get to Auckland to print his works. He couldn't get the works sent off to New York to have the negative scan. So everything has been put, rescheduled. But really, I mean, having to forego those deadlines isn't really a big problem, as it turns out. I mean, the shows are ready when they are ready. But I mean, they both have experienced, both Robin and Mark have experienced difficulties due to COVID. Robin has been invited to show at the Gallery of New South Wales in a fabulous exhibition called Matisse Alive, and that is a show celebrating the works of Matisse with the response of 4 Pacific Island women. And so Robin had come up to Auckland to make the works for this exhibition with the Tongan community here. And Robin has collaborated with both Fijian and Tongan communities to make her tapa and masi. And so she was in Auckland making the works with Ebony Fafita, who was Ebony being the sister of Ruha, who she previously did collaborations with. And so here we have they're working on these fabulous tapa. we can only give you little snippets because I can't give you what the works are going to be, because that has to be previewed by the Gallery of New South Wales, and they don't want us to come in too quickly there. But that's Ebony. They're working on the tapa. So what happened was, Robin is listening, but she just told me today that the work was finished 24 hours before the lockdown for level 4. And her husband Mike had to come up to Auckland to get her, and they raced back to Masterton just to get in time for the lockdown. And the works have remained at Ebony's house since, and soon we'll be able to go or we can go and collect them now.
Because collaboration has been a really important part of Robin's practice for a long time, hasn't it?
Absolutely,
Working with not only people who are experienced in traditional making of the paperbark works, whether it was through a Tongan practice or a Fijian practice, and seeking a kind of contemporary perspective on it.
Well, it brings to fore the cultural practices of those islanders and the way that, and also what the imagery they use combined with the imagery of Robin. Here we have the materials which are used, and they're all natural dyes.
Penny, can you just go back to the one with the materials for a minute? I think this is really fascinating, looking at them.
Was in the room with Ebony. So all of the dyes are made from either natural plants or earth, and the black especially is very important as a dye.
And the nonu there, the bottle of nonu dye, it's a red dye, I think, made from the root of the nonu plant and then mixed with lime water or just water, which changes, I think, which is originally a yellow colour, and then the mixing with the lime water changes it to red. But Robin, we can maybe
Robin can talk.
Robin a little bit later on about that. I mean, there's a lot of these soot, and I'm interested in that bottle that says mangrove dye. You know, the idea of the using the plants and boiling and really reducing them down to these kind of intense colours. And a lot of the ummia is a kind of a red earth mixture. So there you've got the entire kind of palette of colours all through the natural ingredients. And then the last one that you've got there, Penny, this is going to be the key work in the exhibition, isn't it, Jenny?
So these are the Tongan tapa, but this work is a Fijian masi made in collaboration with Tamari Thumbai. Sorry, I couldn't say Thumbai Kana there.
Yeah.
And she has been Robin's collaborator for some time. And Robin is also supposed to go to Fiji to work with Tamari to make the masi for the Gallery of New South Wales. Now, last year she made specially for us, for 2 rooms show at the Sydney Art Fair, she made this work, as well as some smaller works, and they were all sold. This one's still on hold, but because they're all sold and they're about to disappear, we decided that we should show them in Auckland for the Auckland audience before they disappeared. And this is a magnificent masi. It's 3 meters wide, and you can see the response to Martisa's work with a wonderful clutter of domestic items sitting on the table there.
Well, in fact, talking about those items on the table, if everyone can peer in and see and identify, it'd be a fantastic thing to do, just to identify and find references and resources to a lot of those. I mean, when I see this work, I think of images from Japanese printmaking and the Japanese tea ceremony with these kind of screens coming across, but also Indian miniatures with lots of decorative tile work on panels and walls. But there's a New Zealand reference on that table, isn't there, Jenny, with the candle and the jug and water?
Of the McCann.
Making reference to McCann's work.
But also just notice work's called That Vase, and on the right-hand side of the work is the vase behind the panel there. So it's very beautiful work.
So there's a lot of references. I like the reference with this work with these kind of interior domestic spaces and kind of still lives, to thinking back to some of Robin's earlier works, where particularly the wonderful print of the woman crouching within a domestic scene, with objects and so on, and the different kind of ways that a still life was interpreted into a kind of a daily life practice. So these works can continue that pattern, but then the pattern building and the cultural references are really taken, to a much more intense level, aren't they?
Indeed, yes. So
what's happening then in July? We'll be having an exhibition.
So what we have is, because we have our two spaces, Robin will be showing upstairs, and it opens on the 24th of July. So we've got a very extended show of mats. And then downstairs we will be having the work of Mark Adams.
Yeah, but you'll hope that the Matisse Alive exhibition will be, at the moment the dates are being rescheduled with the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
I don't know if Robin knows the dates yet, but it's going to be next year. And I mean, she's got to be able to get to Fiji to make the works there. And I presume all the other artists will be having worse problems because not some of them are in USA. There's 4 artists, one is from USA.
Yeah, I've got the list here, Jenny, actually. It's a fantastic list for Robin to be a part of. So in that exhibition is also, there are actually 4 solo exhibitions within this kind of contemporary perspective on Matisse. And alongside Robin will be Angela Tiatia, Sally Smart, who's a Melbourne-based, really interesting artist. We have works of hers in the Chartwell collection, large collages, quite a lot of textile and pattern work with the figure, very, very theatrical. And also Nina Chanel Abney, who's a African-American artist from the USA. Have I got that?
That's right, but I'm not sure which part of the USA.
Yeah,
but
a fantastic grouping of artists.
Yes, so she may have trouble getting to Australia.
Of course, yeah.
Anyway,
we're all going to have trouble getting to Australia for a little while.
Hopefully going to be next year.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're excited to show Robin's
that'll be great.
Again, because it's very beautiful.
And then, so that's going to be upstairs, Jenny, and you've got Mark Adams, really interesting project.
So then we have Mark Adams downstairs, and
Penny, what we might do, because we were actually wanting to bring in, we have Hamish Coney here lurking in the wings as well, and what we'd like to do for members of the audience is perhaps, well, Penny, you'll have to see, welcome Hamish. What we'd like to be able to do is just show you very quickly, depending if Penny can do this, show us quickly the images of Mark's, just to set in your mind what we're talking about. And then you'll have to see if you can do it, Penny. Otherwise, we'll talk about the project and show us the images. Yeah, show us the Mark's images here. And this is by way of a kind of a visual introduction to the project. And Hamish, maybe for each one of these images, you could very briefly tell us what we're looking at there.
Well, what we have there is one of a suite of photographs by Mark taken in 1999-2000, charting the wider body of work, charts the whakairo, the carvings of the Ngāti Tarawhai Tohunga whakairo Tena Waitiri, who was born in 1854, died in 1932, I believe. And that shows Clandon Hall in Surrey, near Guildford, showing the Whare Tupuna Hinemihi o te ao tawhito, Hinemihi of the olden times. She's there in the right-hand panel, sitting in the grounds effectively as a folly in the 1730s Palladian mansion of the Earl of Onslow, who was in the early 1890s the Governor-General of New Zealand.
Fantastic. And Penny, can you show us the next one, and then we can get into a bit more in depth. Yeah.
Under the oak tree.
And make a special note of the roof, because Penny, Jenny and Hamish are going to make mention of a curious story around the roof. It's a thatched roof, isn't it, Hamish? Yeah.
So I was looking earlier at some photos of Hinemihi, and I was reading that the thatch only occurred because they looked at the photograph after the eruption of Tarawera. Hinemihi was actually situated in Tarawera during the eruption, and it was covered in this thick dust, and so they mistook the dust for thatch, and so when it was the house was put together, they gave it a thatched roof.
It's an incredible story, and you that photo that Jenny's referring to, you can see online, and either it'll be through well, if you do a general search for Hinemihi of the Old World, particularly through the National Trust or through Heritage New Zealand, you may well find that amazing photo that Jenny's talking about. And what else have we got there, Penny?
So that's the Onslow room. So in two rooms that are of Mark's photographs of the carvings of Tēnei Waitiri. And there was a book produced with by Nicholas Thomas and Mark, and essay by James Schuster, who was the great grandson of Tēnei Waitiri. And there were many works in the show, but one of them was the whare Hinemihi. And
but he had this room inside the house as well.
So Mark photographed the house, and there was an Onslow room, because of course Lord Onslow would have taken back all these artifacts from New Zealand. You've got the huia birds and the kakapo and the kiwi, and so this room was full of dioramas of New Zealand treasures, basically.
And so, Penny, can you flick to the? I think that's now we'll just switch out of our images.
Right. So what happened, of course, was that in 2015, Clandon House burnt down to the ground. And so there's Mark sitting with all those lovely photographs of the house. And so the house burnt down, but Hinemihi remained in the garden. And I'll ask Hamish again, but before 2015, there was a movement to bring Hinemihi back to New Zealand. So maybe
can you tell us a bit about that, Hamish?
Yeah, I visited Hinemihi in August 2014 and published a piece. And the reason for my visit to Hinemihi, and that was only a matter of months before Clandon Hall burnt down. And Clandon Hall burning down is really the catalyst for Hinemihi making her journey back to New Zealand. So it's kind of a tragedy that meant in the form of the eruption of Tarawera. And for historians, this evening, the 134th anniversary of the eruption of Tarawera. So it's quite an auspicious time to be speaking to you. So Hinemihi had become quite a focus for Ngāti Ranana, which is the term that is used to describe the UK-based iwi. And has, for example, when the New Zealand delegation went to the Olympics in London, they had their welcome there at Hinemihi.
But wasn't there another major, more historical connection through the Maori Battalion?
Yeah, in the Hinemihi, in the grounds of Clandon Hall, has had a number of locations. And it was originally used as a kind of a lake house for the storing of dinghies and whatever kayaks looked like back in the Edwardian times. And soldiers of the Maori Battalion who were convalescing there during the First World War effectively rebuilt and relocated Hinemihi, or tidied up. Exactly what took place is lost in the mist of time. But it's amazing how many times in her history Hinemihi has touched New Zealand, New Zealanders. So it's a really exciting time to be thinking that after ultimately it'll be 135, 136 years, nearly 140 years, because the house was carved in 1881, that she will ultimately return to New Zealand.
So a question, Hamish, when the house first went to UK, was it the whole house or just the panels?
It was 23 surviving carved panels. to be fair, the majority of the carved panels of the house that had survived the eruption in 1886. And Hinemihi is also quite famous, given that so many of the survivors was sheltered in the house. It was one of the few surviving structures during the eruption.
And I sort of think we have more kind of a real sense about what that must have been like at the time because of the White Island eruption and images that we've seen, you know, on the news of this incredible coating, and to sort of think that the fire, was it a large structure or was it a small structure? Maybe it's just in that photo of Mark's that it's so dwarfed by the big tree next to it, but also, you know, the grandeur of the house.
She shrank in size a little in transit, shall we say.
Yeah.
She was never a very large house. She was carved in 1881 and stood at Te Wairoa, effectively at the entrance to the Pink and White Terraces.
Oh, right.
So she was originally commissioned by a Tūhorangi chief by the name of Aporo Whare Kaniwha to be where guests would be welcomed onto Tūhorangi land before they over to Rotavahana, immediately behind Te Wairoa, to visit the Pink and White Terraces. So she was an assertion of tribal mana, but she also stands as one of the really first genuine moments where Maori culture enters this kind of tourism entrepreneurship. Te Arawa were very aware of the treasure they had on their doorstep, the eighth wonder of the world, the Pink and White Terraces. And Hinemihi is really also very interesting because she's one of the only houses, and the only one that I can find, I'm sure there will be others, that's named for a kuia. So that is something that the exhibition will unpack, the reason for the naming of her as Hinemihi.
Right. And is she the only Māori whare in the UK?
I think there are remnants of Maggie Papakura's house somewhere in the UK. Of course, the British Museum has all sorts of examples of whakairo, but as an extant house, she's one of only 2 in the world, I think. The other one's Raru in Hamburg, and there's one in Chicago, or there's remnants in Chicago.
I was reading that there were 4 houses overseas.
Okay.
So I don't know I only know the Raru in Hamburg and Hinemihi, so I don't know what were the other 2.
The 4th one, I'm not so sure, and I know that there is. It really depends on what you define as a house, because in some of these, they're really kind of remnants.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But Jenny, you alluded to a particularly kind of newsworthy announcement that's really come through recently from Heritage New Zealand about the possible repatriation of 13 of the carved panels. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So we just received an email from David McNichol about New Zealand heritage. I mean, it has been an ongoing question, but New Zealand heritage is going to repatriate 13 of the carved panels. But at the same time, there will be 13 new panels carved to go back to UK. So that will become a new modern Hinemihi still remaining in the garden at Clandon House. At one point it was decided that Clandon House could not be rebuilt, it was too difficult, and so the fate of Hinemihi seemed to be up in the air because it couldn't just stay there on its own, as it were. But now it looks like they're going to rebuild, and then Hinemihi will be a functioning whare for meeting house for the tribes in UK.
And Hamish, do you know what will happen when the panels? I mean, I understand that they're in a conservation lab in the centre in the UK somewhere, but once the UK makes progress in the restrictions, and they will be able to journey here. And do you know what the plans are for where they will be once they're here?
I think that is an ongoing conversation. If we were having this Zoom in 2 weeks' time, I'd be able to have a little bit more information. Mark and I are travelling down to Rotorua next week to meet. There's a group called Ngā Kohinga Whakairo o Hinemihi, which is effectively the steering group, consisting of representatives of the 3 iwi that are directly related to the house, which of course is Tūhorangi, Ngāti Hinemihi and Ngāti Tarawhai, which is the iwi of the carvers, Wero Tāroe and Tena Waitiri. And obviously the original site in Te Wairoa, which is immediately next to what we understand today as the buried village, is one of the candidate sites, and discussions around where Hinemihi should stand, what form she should take when she returns, how much work is going to be required to something to her former glory or original state. It's just the carvings that went, and it wasn't the complete group of carvings, but it's fundamentally a representative body of work. Those are all ongoing conversations that involve Heritage New Zealand, Ngā Kohinga. I imagine there will be various sort of tourism bodies that will want to be part of that conversation. So that's not 100% resolved at the moment, but ultimately it will be. And then when Hinemihi, and I guess who knows how long it's going to take for the journey back, the reconstruction, the reciting and all of that work, that could be a number of years. But we're really at the beginning of the sense that that she will return, and it's really exciting. I was talking to Jim Schuster, who is the great-great-grandson of Tēnā Waitere, and I remember him saying to me that he wasn't sure that in his own lifetime Hinemihi would return. So when he got the news, he was able to call his father and say, look, Dad, there's every chance that Hinemihi will return during your lifetime. And that he was able to call his son and say to his son, look, you're not going to need to pick up the taiha to keep on campaigning for the return. So it's a really massive moment for Te Arawa in general, and obviously for the affected iwi. So it'll be a big day when she returns and opens.
Well, hey, Jenny, I wonder if you could explain a little bit about how Hamish became involved in this project with Mark.
That's right. So Mark and I decided that it would be very timely to have a show of the Hinemihi photos he's got, because at the first exhibition there was only one image of Hinemihi, whereas in fact there's all the images of Clandon House. There's the image of he took a photograph of the site where Hinemihi was removed in Rotorua. So there's many photographs, and it's a fabulous exhibition. But I mean, we've been talking to Hamish about Hinemihi for years now. So when we told him, my first was to ask Hamish just to write a piece about Hinemihi for the exhibition, and then we've extended that and asked him to do a catalogue. So we'll be producing a book. Hamish will be writing a book which will include Mark's photographs, historical photographs, and again, it's very timely because it will be a celebration of the return of Hinemihi to New Zealand. So all in all, it's kind of just happened to be just work out really well. And so poor old Mark, the show had to be put back because Mark was stuck in Christchurch and couldn't get to Auckland to print the works.
Right.
And the way he works, his scanned in New York, and he was too worried to send the negatives off in the middle of COVID. So waiting for the negatives to come back, and then he will print in Auckland, and also some of them are hand prints, but he couldn't get the studios here. Lagonda can't make works without going to Lagonda. So,
and
so
Kevin in K Road.
K Road. So we're just waiting for Mark to be able to come to Auckland to make this show happen. So really, the whole of our schedule has stopped because of the importance of this show. Really, we didn't want it to disappear. We're just waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
So when it happens, it's good. It happens.
Well, I think this is what struck me about the project, and I mentioned at the beginning about artist projects that span time and place, and certainly, and Mark's project and Robin's as well is one of those examples, because you're planning on bringing in historical photographs by the Burton brothers, for example, and
Josiah
really
Martin,
setting the historical.
Elizabeth Pullman, William Colley, Charles Spencer. So I mean, the exhibition is effectively going to be, of course, the complete suite of the Hinemihi works of Mark's, which have never been shown together as a group, which is quite a large body of work, and then a suite of around a dozen 1880s, 1874, I think is the earliest images of Hinemihi standing at Te Wairoa by the Burton brothers, pink and white terraces images, and other related Te Arawa Whakairo images. So we're going to have 130 odd years of photographic practice. A lot of the image capture by the Burton brothers, those large plate cameras, it's exactly the same technology that Mark works with.
Oh, right.
So we're going to be unpacking some of that in the exhibition and in the text in the catalogue.
And also, everybody knows Mark's work, but the importance is Mark just doesn't take a photograph. He inhabits a space. He goes there and he doesn't take just one frame. He takes, maybe a whole panorama. So you actually are experiencing that place that he's wanting to document for us. And his practice is about the confrontation between the Polynesian culture and the European culture, whether it's in New Zealand, and in this case, it's happening in Clandon House with the house done in the garden. So, we always love to have Mark Adams' photographs in the gallery because they're always telling a fabulous story.
Yeah, and in fact, the story of Hinemihi, Hamish, you referencing, it's in a way the role of the whare when it was in its original site was in this kind of burgeoning time of, can we call it tourism, a movement of people around coming to New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so there was already a sense of interaction going on in the house in its early history.
It was, Hinemihi was designed as a space to welcome guests. Obviously, most of those guests at the time would have been Pākehā, either locals or, people travelled from all over the world to visit the Pink and White Terraces. It was kind of a sensation. And those early guides, Guide Sophia, Guide Rangi, was really New Zealand's first celebrities. They had an international profile. They were well known. They would receive letters booking visits to the Pink and White Terraces from overseas. They would arrive and somebody would say, 6 months hence, on that Wednesday, can I have a trip, Guide Sophia? So Hinemihi has been in the culture one way in really interesting ways. I found out just this morning from Dr. Kerianne Wikitera, who is a professor at AUT, who did her thesis on Hinemihi on this very topic, which is the integration of Maori culture with tourism from in its earliest forms. And she's going to write a very interesting essay in the catalogue. But she told me, I was unaware of this, and we're hoping we can find a copy or an example, that one of the carvings of Hinemihi featured on the New Zealand £1 note in the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
And she thinks that she knows where there is one. And so we definitely want to have a 19... Has anybody got one there sitting around at home?
There's bound to be. You put a call out to the public and it comes back to you. I'm believing the boomerang communication system. So,
in the course of doing research, it's fantastic to uncover the connections that Hinemihi had in the culture, even whilst she was away. We want to also kind of honour the guardianship of Lord Onslow. He loved New Zealand. He was only here for...
it was 4 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1889 or 1890, 3 or 4 years. He named his first son Huia, who was born in New Zealand. And we've got a lovely image of Huia wearing a korowai, which we're going to put in the catalogue. And he himself was a very keen amateur photographer. And I have discovered a wonderful image, which we're going to publish in the catalogue, of Lord Onslow on the shores of Lake Rotoiti with his plate camera, very similar to the type of camera that the Burton brothers would use and that also Mark Adams uses.
Oh, gosh.
And I think the location of that photograph is in the very same bay that one of the sister houses of Hinemihi stands, a house called Uanuku Mai Rarotonga, which is the oldest carved foray on a marae in New Zealand. So we're going to also have historic images in the catalogue of the sister houses carved by Tena Waitere and Wero Te Roi, so we can place Hinemihi in context of a wider kind of tradition and body of work.
Well, talking about context, Jenny, I think with what Hamish can bring is this kind of research and context, but it's certainly something that Mark has really sought out in his practice as well. He's close collaborations with the writers of, for example, Nicholas Thomas, was it? She was a, anthropologist.
He's had many collaborations with Nicholas Thomas on the Cook sites. Mark's always very careful to consult with the iwi when he takes works. He will never take photographs of works that, or show works that there is a taupo or problem with. So he's a very conscious of those relationships with iwi.
In fact, what that does, Jenny, in my mind, is really kind of throw up what the role of photography is in terms of Mark's perception about photography. You know, it's the role of the image and the kind of responsibility of the image maker. That's what he's referring to, isn't it?
Yes, and I mean, I think when Mark Adams was one of the first artists I worked with, and he didn't have a gallery. And I really think he saw his photographs as something that were not really a commercial thing. They weren't for selling. They needed to be taken. And and so we've gradually managed to place his works in various collections around New Zealand and museums. And in fact, Hamish has placed his works in some really good collections as well. But he wasn't ever thinking about making art to sell. He was sort of making art to show us our histories, to bring to light all our cultural histories and stories.
And I think actually that also relates to the work that's in the Auckland Art Gallery collection, 4 of his large-scale photographs, and they're all 4 are unique prints, so they're not part of an edition. They're just the unique image, and they can't be made into other editions and sold elsewhere. So for him, I think he takes this responsibility very seriously, and that's where I think collaborating with partners with the knowledge is certainly something he's really keen on. Talking about your knowledge, Hamish, you were telling there's some connection with Gardiner and this house that you were telling me. She was the daughter of Tēnei Waitiri, the carver?
Gardiner is Tēnei Waitiri's daughter.
Yeah.
Hinemihi Tuarua, number 2,
yeah,
was carved in 1928 and stands, it's on the Schuster family land immediately outside Whakarewarewa.
Right.
And our meeting, our hui next week down in Rotorua is in the 3rd Hinemihi, which stands at Ngāpuna. So within the rohe of Tuhorangi, Hinemihi stands as a really significant figure. So we are really looking forward to meeting the various iwi. One of the reasons why we have applied for funding for the catalogue to Creative New Zealand, we haven't heard yet, so everybody please send your best wishes out there. We've got a lovely letter of support from Heritage New Zealand, which we're very appreciative of, is that so we can print sufficient copies of the catalogue to distribute as a koha into the various iwi within the Te Arawa region. And I really don't want to say too much about that just yet, but we have received a very warm response from local iwi with regard to the exhibition, and I think some great things might happen as a consequence.
Right. Well, I think, Penny, if you've got anyone who's got questions, we should go to those now, but I just wanted to invite Jenny to kind of wrap up the project. Remind us again the dates.
Well, we're hoping that it will all be ready for the 24th of July. They haven't actually, Mark is coming up to Auckland next week to start printing, so hopefully the schedule works. So that's that show, and again showing Robin's work. So we're very pleased that we're all back to normal.
Yeah, and with 2 spectacular exhibitions opening later in July. So let us know if you've got any questions, we'd love or knowledge about the either of the 2 projects. We'd love to hear from you. We'll just wait and see.
I've put it out to everyone and asked if they have any questions, and I haven't had anyone come back. So please do let me know if you would like to. We'll just unmute you and you can ask a question now. So,
right.
Anybody?
And while we're waiting for that, I'll do a little plug again about the Auckland Art Gallery opening to the public this weekend. And it includes the first time we'll see the very large photography exhibition, Civilization Now, I think it's called, a large-scale international photography exhibition that takes up a vast new space, and plus we'll get the first little look at some of the little kind of architectural changes that have happened on level 1, which has changed some of the spaces, the exhibition spaces. So and there will be new collection hangs happening in the next little while too, so it'll be great to watch out for that. So Penny, I think on that note, unless we've got comments?
I've noticed that David's unmuted. Did you have a question, David?
Yeah, I did. I just want to thank, I'm on the board of Heritage New Zealand, and I want to thank Hamish and Jenny for their ongoing interest and involvement. We've done our bit by persuading against the odds the National Trust to release the whakaaro of Hinemihi. It took many visits and many hours of persuasion. I think they felt it was a mini Elgin Marbles to let these things go. They've done it, they've agreed. Had it not been for COVID, they'd be here, I think, by now. So we're working on it's really the biosecurity aspects of getting the whakaaro back to New Zealand, but we're nearly there, and we're really looking forward to working with the iwi, and with great thanks to, which is why we sent that letter of introduction to you, Hamish. You know, we believe you're doing a wonderful job with your aspect of this whole process. We're delighted with that. So we're thrilled to bits that these incredibly special taonga are coming back, and we're looking forward to Te Puia. They've already started, in fact, carving the replacement whakaaro now. It's underway. So it's a great thing to be involved in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
And it's my opportunity to say thanks to Jenny, Todd of Two Rooms Gallery for hosting us here at your home tonight. We're sitting in front of a Gretchen Albrecht painting, which I hope you've enjoyed looking at instead of staring at our faces the whole time. And thank you to Hamish for joining us here as well and imparting your knowledge. Thank you to Robin for joining us on the Zoom chat, and to all of you for being a regular part of our cocktail chats. And we'll see you next week and the week after, and then watch out for news. Penny sends newsletters to all of the foundation members, and you'll be able to hear where to from here for the cocktail chats. I left my cocktail glass at home, so I've got my glass of water here. So cheers, everyone, and thanks again for your participation. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.